Dear listeners, I welcome you to my channel. Leave your comments and impressions, I value your opinion. I never imagined the weight of betrayal could crush the air from my lungs until I walked into my bedroom to find Mark, my husband of 7 years, tangled in the sheets with someone who definitely wasn't me. My heart thrummed painfully against my ribcage, each beat a loud echo in the otherwise silent confrontation. Jess, Mark started, his voice trembling as he hastily wrapped a sheet around his waist. But I raised a hand, silencing him instantly. Save it, I hissed, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. I didn't need to hear the excuses, the lies that would spill from his lips. Instead, I turned my gaze to her, a woman whose face bore the ghost of sympathy. She was nobody to me, yet here she was in the bed I had shared with my husband. You have 24 hours, I spoke evenly, directing my words to Mark. Pack your things and leave. I want you out of my life by tomorrow. Without waiting for his response, I stormed out of the room, my body shaking with a cocktail of rage and sorrow. Over the next day, the silence of our home was punctuated by the sounds of Mark packing his belongings, each thud of his suitcase a grim reminder of the shattering of our life together. The house felt eerily quiet once he left. I sat on the couch, staring at the door he had closed behind him, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. It was then that I decided I wouldn't let this break me. I would move on, stronger and wiser. But life, as I was about to discover, had other plans. 2 weeks after Mark's departure, there was a knock at my door. It was Laura, a friend, or more accurately, an acquaintance of mine from the gym. Hey Jess, I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you. How are you holding up? She chirped, stepping inside before I could even answer. Her sudden interest in my well-being raised a red flag, but I let her in, not wanting to appear rude. We sat, and she poured us both a glass of wine, her chatter filling the air. It was casual at first, then curiously pointed. So, have you thought about dating again? You're such a catch, Jess. It'd be a shame to see you alone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. It was too calculated, too smooth. Laura was not known for her subtlety, and her sudden interest in my dating life felt off. I watched her carefully, her every move, her every blink. That's when it clicked. She was too focused, too intent on gauging my reaction. Laura, I said slowly, setting my wine glass down. What are you really doing here? She faltered, a flicker of guilt passing over her face before she masked it with a smile. Just being a friend, she insisted, but her eyes darted away from mine. It was then I knew. Mark had sent her. This was a game to him, perhaps a way to manipulate or even hurt me further. I think you should leave, I stated firmly. Laura stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You know, Jess, you really are paranoid. I was just trying to be nice. Her tone was sharp, a stark contrast to her earlier friendliness. As she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Mark was playing a game, but he didn't realize I was already 2 steps ahead. This was not going to end the way he thought. Little did I know, my resolve would soon lead me down a path of chaos that none of us could have foreseen. A week after Laura's unsettling visit, my phone buzzed relentlessly. I was tempted to ignore it, thinking it was another one of Mark's ploys, but the caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen in a while. Tina, my college roommate and a friend who had moved out of state years ago. Jess, is everything okay? I heard about you and Mark. Tina's voice was filled with genuine concern, a refreshing change from the undercurrents of deceit I've been drowning in lately. Hey Tina. Yeah, it's been rough, but I'm managing. How did you hear about it? There was a pause. Laura mentioned it when we bumped into each other at a conference last week. She seemed worried about you. My grip tightened on the phone. Laura again? Well, that's thoughtful of her, I managed to say, though skepticism laced my tone. Listen, I'm actually back in town for a few weeks. Why don't we catch up? Dinner at our old favorite place? Tina suggested. The idea of stepping out into a world where every corner seemed booby-trapped by Mark's machinations made me hesitant, but Tina's voice was a lifeline in the swirling storm. Sure, that sounds great, I replied, trying to latch onto the normalcy it promised. We met at the small Italian restaurant where we had spent countless evenings during our university days. Tina hadn't changed much. Her laugh was still as loud and her stories as animated as ever. For a moment, it was easy to forget the chaos of my current life. But then midway through dinner, I noticed a familiar figure at the bar. Daniel, Mark's best friend. Tina, did you invite anyone else tonight? I asked. My eyes locked on the figure who had just looked our way. No, why? She followed my gaze and then shook her head. Oh, that's weird. That's Daniel, right? Why would he be here? Maybe it's just a coincidence, I murmured, though my gut twisted with suspicion. After dinner, as Tina and I walked out, Daniel intercepted us. Just a word. His tone was neither friendly nor hostile, a practiced neutrality. I think you've said enough with your presence, Daniel, I snapped, not in the mood for more games. It's not what you think. I'm not here for Mark. I'm here for me. I need to apologize, he said earnestly, catching me off guard. That night, at your place, I knew what was going to happen. I should have stopped him, warned you. His confession stunned me into silence. Tina squeezed my arm, a silent pillar of support. Apology not accepted, I said coldly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. You can leave us alone now. As we walked away, I could feel Daniel's eyes on us, but more pressing was the realization that Mark's reach extended further than I had feared. It wasn't just about seducing me or winning me back. It was about control, about proving he could manipulate not just me, but our entire circle. Back home, as I locked the door behind me, the weight of the night settled heavily on my shoulders. Mark was turning my life into a chess game, moving pieces around to checkmate me into submission. I was done being a player in his game. It was time to rewrite the rules, even if it meant embracing the disaster that might follow. Little did I know, my next move would bring unforeseen allies and enemies out of the woodwork, tipping the scales in a dangerous, unpredictable way. The days following my encounter with Daniel were filled with a palpable tension. I started noticing cars that lingered a bit too long outside my house, unfamiliar faces in familiar places. Paranoia gripped me, feeding into the fear that Mark's game was only escalating. But amidst this chaos, I decided it was time to stop reacting and start acting. On a particularly overcast Thursday, my resolve led me to seek help from an unexpected source. Alina, a private investigator recommended by a mutual acquaintance who understood my situation. The cafe where we agreed to meet buzzed with the quiet hum of mid-morning patrons, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Alina was punctual, her demeanor professional yet approachable. Jess, I've read the brief you sent over. It's clear you're being manipulated, but we need solid evidence to pin down exactly how Mark is orchestrating this. I want to know who's involved, friends, strangers, it doesn't matter. I need names, places, everything, I stated, my voice firm, belying the fear that itched at the back of my mind. Alina nodded, her eyes sharp. I'll start surveillance tomorrow. It might also be helpful to tap into your phone and email. See if there's any unusual activity or traces of hacking. Whatever it takes, I agreed, a sense of empowerment building as I took control of the situation. Leaving the cafe, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. But before I could reach my car, a voice called out from behind. Jessica. Turning, I faced a man in his late 30s, his features vaguely familiar yet hard to place. Who are you? I asked cautiously. I'm Mike, Mark's college roommate. We've met a few times at parties, he explained, his tone friendly yet anxious. Look, I know I might be the last person you want to talk to, but I heard about what he's been doing. It's not right. I want to help you. His words took me by surprise. An ally from Mark's own past was the last thing I expected. Why would you help me? I questioned, skepticism lacing my tone. He's changed, Jess. He's not the guy I knew. What he's doing to you, it's messed up. I've seen him planning something with Laura, heard bits and pieces. It sounds serious, Mike confessed, looking over his shoulder as if worried we were being watched. Meet me here tomorrow, same time. We can talk more then, I suggested, not fully trusting yet desperate for any leads. Okay, I'll be here, Mike agreed before quickly walking away. Driving home, the day's events replayed in my mind. Meeting Alina had given me a sliver of hope, and Mike's sudden appearance, although suspicious, could not be ignored. I was gathering allies in this twisted game, but I also knew that with each move, I risked more. The stakes were high, and there was no turning back. That night, as I lay in bed, the reality of my situation settled in. This was more than a simple case of marital betrayal. It was a calculated assault on my life and sanity, But with Alina's expertise and Mike's inside information, I was no longer a helpless pawn. I was becoming the master of my own fate, ready to face whatever Mark had planned for me head on. The game was on, and I was ready to fight back, even if it meant dragging hidden truths into the light. The days following my agreement to collaborate with Mike were a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and covert exchanges. Alina's investigation was in full swing, her updates becoming the lifeline I clung to. Each piece of evidence she gathered added another layer of understanding to the labyrinth Mark had constructed around me. It was late one evening when Alina called with a tone of urgency I hadn't heard before. "Jess, you need to see this. Can you meet now?" "Absolutely," I replied, my pulse quickening. We arranged to meet at a quiet diner away from prying eyes. When I arrived, Alina slid a folder across the table towards me. Inside were photographs and documents that made my head spin. There were pictures of Mark and Laura together, looking more than just conspiratorial. They seemed intimate, partners in more ways than one. "He's been using Laura to get to you, yes, but there's more. They're planning something big, something that involves a lot of your joint assets. Look at these bank documents," Alina explained, pointing to a series of transactions that I had no knowledge of. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing he was not just trying to manipulate my emotions but also attempting to undermine my financial stability. My shock, however, turned to resolve. "What's our next move?" "That's up to you," Alina said. "But if you want my advice, confront him. Bring all of this out in the open. He won't expect that." And she was right. I arranged to meet Mark under the pretense of discussing our separation further, at the same park where we once celebrated our engagement, an ironic full circle. As I approached the designated spot, I saw him sitting there, the autumn leaves creating a picturesque scene that was starkly at odds with the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Jess, I'm glad you came," Mark began, standing to greet me. His voice held a note of something that sounded like sincerity, but I was past falling for his facade. "Cut the act, Mark." "I know everything," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I tossed the folder onto the table between us. His face paled as he flipped through the contents. "How did you save it? I know about you and Laura, the money, all of it. It's over, Mark. I'm taking everything to my lawyer." The look of utter defeat on his face was almost satisfying, but I wasn't done. "And one more thing. Mike? He's been helping me. Did you really think your old friend wouldn't turn on you?" Mark's confusion was palpable. "Mike? What are you talking about?" Just then, Mike stepped out from where he'd been waiting nearby. Mark's expression morphed into one of betrayal as he looked from Mike to me. "This game you started, I'm ending it. On my terms," I declared. As Mark and Mike exchanged heated words, I turned and walked away, the crisp air filling my lungs with a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't just walking away from Mark. I was moving towards a new life, one where I no longer played the victim but the victor. The twist, however, came days later. Mike contacted me with a sheepish admission. "Jess, there's something you should know. I was working for Mark initially. He sent me to spy on you, but when I saw what he was really up to, how he changed, I couldn't go through with it. I had to help you instead." His confession was a bitter pill, but it was overshadowed by the empowerment of having outplayed them all. In the end, it wasn't just about escaping Mark's manipulations. It was about reclaiming my life and my agency, turning a sinister game into a testament of my resilience. As I rebuilt my life, free from deceit, I knew this chapter was closed. But ahead lay a future filled with possibilities, ready for me to write my own story on my own terms.